Good. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie, and we'll talk today about community-led growth. I'll try to speak a little bit slower. I know that the audience is primarily Polish. I understood a little bit what the previous speaker was talking about. My background, I was born and raised in Russia, but moved here in the US 10 years ago. And right now what I do is I help SaaS companies, and SaaS stands for software as a service. So basically software companies grow. And one of those growth opportunities that I recently found out myself was community-led growth. What community-led growth is, it's a framework to help companies grow by building a community. And while I'll focus on SaaS companies specifically, but this framework can be applied to any kind of company, any industry. And just to be clear, this is not going to be, how to build a Facebook group. It is a framework that will help you boost your authority, acquire new customers, improve conversions from trial to lead, from trial to paid, or from lead to paid, because finally you'll be able to talk to your either prospective customers or your existing leads, and you'll hear their feedback. Did you know that the number one reason for SaaS companies that are failing is actually no market fit? And so what it means is those software companies, when they're launching, there's no need for what they're offering. So a lot of times, my husband is a software engineer. He's the technical founder. So what often happens is those SaaS companies, software companies, founders, they have an idea, and right away, because this is where their comfort zone is, they decide to develop it, and they build the features. Let's say they know that the competitors build 5 features. Oh, I'm going to build 10 features, and I'm going to win on those features. And what happens, they spend a month and month of work, and in the end, a lot of times, there's disappointment because they were not able to talk to their ideal customers. They have not checked whether this tool is something that they need. They have not checked whether this features is something that they want, or they want something else. And so overall, this is why a lot of companies fail. And specifically, this is a number one reason for software companies to fail. But also, SaaS companies that are now category leaders, companies like HubSpot, for example, they did not start as a category leader. They started as they started to have a strong community. They built their own community, and now with time, they're an industry leader. So we'll talk about that and much more in this presentation. My name is Natalie Luneva, and for those of you who are not part of my SaaS Boss community, in addition to growing our own SaaS with my husband, I'm also a co-founder at a company called Outranking.io, which helps to produce SEO optimized content that ranks with the power of AI. And so I'm also a growth consultant to a lot of software companies. And overall, what I do is I help SaaS companies identify and implement high ROI growth opportunities. And the idea for community-led growth came to me actually when I was trying to grow one of our companies, and we were trying to tap into a new industry. And we already had an existing product. We just wanted to expand to a new industry that I knew nothing about. And so we, instead of us trying and building features and then going to the industry and saying, hey, here's what we've built, take a look, we decided to do a different approach and we actually built a community. And I'll tell you about how we saved thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in months of work just by having this community. If you have any questions, type them in the chat. I am able to see that, and I know that at the end of the session, we're going to go through all of those questions. But before how, let's talk about why. Let's talk about why companies and just community-led growth is something that we want to focus on. 85% of companies agree that community has had a positive impact on their objectives this year. For the past, we know world turned upside down. And so overall community has never been stronger in the last few months, in the last couple of years. More than 2/3 of companies plan to increase their investment into communities in the coming year as well. I think that soon new chief community officers is going to be the new CMOs, just because it touches so many different departments. So I'll share with you a couple of case studies specifically from my experience and communities that I've built. And then if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. basically, this is like a couple of use cases to get your head spinning, to see if you can come up with some ideas how you can implement this in your company. I'll share 5. The first one is how to increase conversion from trial to paid, or conversion from lead to paying customer. This is an example of a company that are doing their podcast marketplace. And so they had 2,000 free trial takers, basically like leads, who are using their product, but they're not paying for the product, and they had 0 paid customers. So they came to me and they said, we have no idea why this is happening. How can we fix that? Number one thing that I did, and this was probably took me 10 minutes, I created a quick message inviting all of those 2,000 people to a webinar that we hosted together. It can be a webinar, it can be a mastermind type, but really like a video conference where people can come and talk not about your product. This is an important difference. They don't talk about your services or your product, but everyone is there to talk about their problems so that they can connect with each other. And so around 50 people showed up to this webinar, which was actually surprising to us. And they shared us all kind of feedback, why they didn't convert into paid, why this wasn't a problem to them, and why it wasn't maybe as urgent to them. And this helped us share with them how important it is for them to actually do this right now and why they need to do this right now. And so overall, it's been a great session, and the founders learned a lot. So this is the first case study. Another one is for my own company, and this is when we were trying to get into a new industry. So we were trying to get into a nonprofit industry, and I knew nothing about this industry. So instead of us building a bunch of features, we actually decided to organize a small community that will allow us to talk to those prospective customers and hear how they talk about this particular problem, whether they have this problem at all. Is this even our target audience or not? So before we knew what kind of product to build and what kind of message to go to those people with, I needed to talk to them first. And you know, if you're trying to talk to your customers, you know how difficult it is to get someone from your customers to hop on a call with you for like 30 minutes, answering your question or like survey question. It is fairly difficult, but it is so much easier when all of them join for a community call. And this is what I did. I hosted a mastermind type session where I invited those people for weekly calls, and we discussed, you know, just overall problems of the community and what's happening in the world of nonprofit. And you can't believe, but they actually thanked me for hosting that session. So this is another way. Next is new product ideas. I interviewed Andrew Michael, who built a product about 5 years ago. He sold it to Hotjar. I'm pretty sure you know the company Hotjar. He sold his company to Hotjar, and he started a community, Churn.fm. Hopefully you're listening to the podcast. It's really good. So he was trying to identify an idea for his next product. He didn't know what this product is going to be. He was just trying to, you know, be in the community. And now with his podcast and with his community, he got his next idea because he was talking to so many other industry experts and leaders. And now he's actually raised capital for $800,000. Last time I heard. And majority of those people who were speakers at his podcast and who are members of his community are the people who were investors in his new product. So like community is huge. Next is, it is an excuse to connect with influencers, having a community. So I have a Clubhouse, for example, that has, I think, close to 20,000 people right now. And so when I joined one of the companies that I'm co-founder at right now, Ranking.io, I decided to reach out to a bunch of industry experts and invite them to do a Clubhouse session with me. And so let me quickly check if there's any questions there. We're all good. And so it was so surprising, but like more than 300 people were showing up consistently to those sessions. And I was able to connect with a lot of industry experts just because it was an excuse for me to invite them to be interviewed in my group, in my Clubhouse club. And then by just talking there, I connected to so many people. One of them was an SEO executive at a huge marketing agency that employed 1,000 people here in the US, which is absolutely amazing. We would never be able to connect with such a person without having a community. All right, next and the final one that I have on my list here is with the help of communities, the community can be a churn crusher. I have heard a lot of comments from companies who have a community that people that are in the community actually churning at a very low rate compared to those that are not in the community. And community can be like a Slack channel or a Facebook group or something like, there's another website, tribe.so. If you're trying to build a community, check it out as well. So there's multiple ways of, where to host your community. But right now we're just trying to identify whether community is something that you want to do or no. Now, let's talk a little bit about just the benefits of communities. If I were to summarize multiple benefits into a couple of bullet points, and there's more than 5. Right now I have here 5 bullet points. There are more than 5 for sure. So overall loyalty and churn, it's helping decrease churn and increase loyalty. You're getting insights and product feedback that you would not be able to get otherwise. Customer acquisition. UGC is user-generated content because you're generating a bunch of content, and support and success. Right now, we have a Facebook group for one of my products, Outranking.io, and people are answering questions from other people. So it's actually saving us time to answer those questions. And it's giving those people the answer right away that they would otherwise wait, to hear from us, or didn't know how to ask this question. So overall, there's just so many benefits to that. So I'll share a little bit about why communities touch on so many different areas of a company. There was a study done, and they talk about who from the company, which departments are involved in the communities. So around 30% from all the responders are from the marketing department, which is obvious, right? Around 18% are from customer success. Customer success and support is huge, so understandably as well. Around 15% are dedicated community managers, but there's also product people that are involved in the community. There's also engineering people that are involved in the community. And there's also 13% of other, it means like operations, content. So community is touching into so many departments and actually helping the entire company. If we were to just check the community size, overall, you can see here, again, this is from the same study by CMX, and a quarter of all communities is under 1,000 members. So if you're thinking that it's going to take me years to build a community, well, a lot of those companies have a small community. You don't have to have tens of thousands of people in your community. Start very small, and that is still good enough. You're still going to see these benefits. Next, the value of community, again, from the same study. Actually, if you see, aside from, let's say like 70% of all the companies reported value more than $50,000 from having an online community, which is huge. So this makes online communities one of the smartest growth strategies on the market today. But there is one but, and that is also in the same study, they share that more than one dedicated community manager, a majority of those companies have more than one dedicated community manager. So 80% started off with at least one dedicated community manager, which is huge. I mean, it's a lot of money, right? It costs a lot. Who from the startup world can dedicate at least, one person full-time community? Not a lot of people. And so what I'm going to share quickly, like this was all the prelude, and then next after this, right now, I'm going to talk about specific steps that you can implement so that you don't need a dedicated community person. You don't need to spend ages of your life managing the community, but like quick and dirty steps for you to have your community and get the most benefit from your communities. Kind of think about this as 80-20 rule. With the 20% of efforts, you can get 80% of the results. This is what we're after, and this is what I'm going to share with you step by step right now. So let's start step number 1 with the goal. Let's identify what is the goal of you about posting your online community. Why do you want to have your own online community? And just as a refresher, I'm going to share with you the benefits, a list of benefits here again. We can see, like, what's your biggest problem? Do you want to increase loyalty? Is your churn really high? Do customers leave you? Do you want to get more feedback from the customers? Do you want to acquire more customers? Like, what is your goal? And then with that in mind, you decide how to build your community. Step number 2 is format. In what format do you want to host this community? Do you want it to be a weekly call? Do you want it to be like a podcast or interview people? I prefer mastermind type style. So every single week we host a 1-hour session, a mastermind type with multiple people. It has to be under 30 people in the beginning, and can expand into a little bit of different session as well. But decide on the format and stick to that. Next, inviting the audience to your community. I'll share an example here. Remember, I talked about this nonprofit thing that I was trying to identify whether going into a new industry is going to be something that we want to do. And this is exact message that I posted in one of the Facebook groups dedicated to nonprofit community. And it was a very simple message saying that I'm putting together a free group. Who would like to join? Do you see that there is almost 200 comments? Probably there's more now. 200 comments of people saying, yes, please, yes, please, yes, please. Not only that, but they also thank me for giving them this channel, the outlet for them to talk about their problems and just overall connect with each other. Especially during the COVID time, we know how everyone was starved for connection, right? So like this was definitely something that people wanted. Next is hosting those sessions. I usually use Zoom, and so we host those sessions live every week. And the structure is, and I don't know if this is going to be one of the questions. Here's one of the structures that I'm using. So in the beginning, this is just a quick hello, and then what's been happening in the past week, and then just really Q&A. Do I hear similar patterns? Do people ask similar questions? Those are the questions that I want to address, okay? And then next is asking for feedback. So the feedback is like, do you enjoy these masterminds? What would you do better? So let's say you're hosted like 2 to 3 sessions to 4 sessions. Then you can ask your community, how can I improve these calls? Do you like what we have right now? How would you improve? And so asking for feedback is important because the people are going to give you how they think you can improve that. Next, collaborate. This is a crucial step for you to expand your community, which is reaching out to experts and influencers to build partnership relationships and invite them to be an expert during your weekly sessions. So let's say I'm hosting those weekly mastermind calls. They're 1 hour long. For the first 20 minutes, let's say I hear the same problem consistently with people in the mastermind, and they say, let's say I want to learn more about cold outreach. So what do? I go out and I find someone who is an expert in cold outreach, and I tell them, I have this community of people, and I'd like you to come and do a presentation about best practices for cold outreach. For the first 20 minutes, this is the presentation, and then the remaining 40 minutes is our regular mastermind style. What it gives me is the ability to record this expert 20-minute presentation. I can transcribe it. I can turn it into a blog post. I post it on YouTube. I post it as a podcast. You have so many ways of benefiting from just one piece of content that doesn't really take much time for you to put together because you already have a community. You already have an excuse to connect and reach out to those industry experts. And then step number 7 is promoting. Now that you have those industry experts calls on top of your mastermind, you can now promote it in different groups where you know your ideal audience is hanging out and get more and more members in your community. And like this is going to grow exponentially. And the last step is analyze. See what's working, what's not working. For that company, for the nonprofit industry, I ended up hosting 4 mastermind type sessions. And I decided that is not going to be a good fit because people did not have the problem that I thought they had. This was not our ideal audience. They didn't have money to pay. And so overall, we saved thousands, tens of thousands of dollars and months of our lives building the product that they didn't need, or they would not be able to pay for. And those are the 8 steps. If you want a nice acronym, you know how there's like words for each of those letters for each of those steps. Here you go. It is GFIHA-SPA. And that is really like goal, choose your goal, choose your format, invite people, host the session, ask the question and the feedback, collaborate with other experts, promote, and analyze. With that, I'm going to turn the floor to you, and I really want to hear what community will you launch? If this is something that you want to launch, number one, what community, what industry is this going to be for? What type of community? Share it in the comments along with any of your questions, and I would love to get back to those questions. And with that, my name is Natalie Luneva, and if you are interested to learn more about community-led growth, I'm actually writing a book, so you can go to my website to check it out.
Thank you very much, Natalie, for for a session full of content. There is one question from Cyprian. What's a perfect platform to build a community? Social media groups, Zoom, email lists, forums, and so on. You mentioned, of course, your solution, your main solution as hosting mastermind sessions on Zoom. Yeah. Would you recommend as well, other actions, other channels to build a community? Or
yep. I'm dropping a link here. If you're just starting out, I would go between Facebook and Slack if you're just early stage and starting out. If you're a little bit more advanced, check out the platform called Tribe.so. This is another platform. I work tightly with them. Yeah, and Zoom is just a way for us to host those meetings. But Facebook group, Slack channel, and then maybe you have a newsletter, a way to gather these email addresses, and Tribe.so.
Okay, thanks. And a question from my side. You mentioned the mastermind as a main, let's say, channel, yeah, as a main activity. And on this mastermind sessions, there's a lot of course, interaction between all of the participants. Yeah, they share with you, all of the problems they've got and so on. But from my, so it has to be a little bit, engaging and in some way limited, yeah, in a number of people who can actively, engage in such a mastermind session. So is it the situation that there is still, the same very limited number of people taking part in this session, or they are, they mixed together? How do you know? How do you cope with that? Yeah.
Yep, that's a great question. So for that mastermind for nonprofits, you've seen that there's been 200 comments, right? So what I did is I actually created 3 different groups. So I created a Google form for them to fill out. Let's say those that do want to participate in the mastermind, they fill out their contact information. And one of the questions was, how big is your company? In donations, because it was not in revenue, but in donations. And that gave me a chance to connect those people with the specific other companies that are in the same size, because a Red Cross with, I don't know, millions and millions of revenue is not going to want to talk in the same group as, let's say, someone who is making $500 a year. And there were some companies. So I basically put them in different buckets, and I actually hosted 3 different groups. And so it took me, 3 hours per week, 1 hour each. But then I figured out that some people didn't stick around. And so I combined this group all into one. And so rule of thumb, you want to have maybe under 15 to 20 people in the beginning. But that's the beauty of it. A lot of founders, a lot of people and entrepreneurs, they are afraid of starting a community because, it needs to be hundreds of people. That's the beauty. If you start with the mastermind, you know that you only need 10 to 15 people to start a call. And this is where all the beautiful conversations start, where everyone gets a chance to talk about their problems. And it's not pressure. It's like a friendly conversation over beer. So in the beginning, this is how I would recommend you do that. A mastermind, once it's growing bigger, you can do multiple rooms. And if it's going like really big, then you can turn it, instead of doing mastermind, you can turn it into just expert sessions where, let's say, once a week, you invite experts to talk about, specific problem, and then you live stream it to your community.
Okay. So definitely quality over quantity in the first step.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because again, you are not after having a community for the check mark, like, yes, I have a community, but you're after those conversations with people.
Yeah. Okay, so there's another question from miał. How would you mix online and offline to build a sales community in the post-COVID times?
To be honest with you, I haven't done both a mix of online and offline. I'm just thinking about how this can work out. Like, we can think together. If your business, let's say, is serving local area, then it's going to be very easily translatable from online to offline because your community already was a local one, right? My communities, they're all over the place, so I would not be able to turn it from online to offline very easily unless I create different chapters. So for example, I have a US chapter, or I have a European chapter, or a Poland chapter. If your audience is local, for example, tomorrow I'm going to be speaking at a Bulgarian conference, and so their audience is Bulgarian. And so let's say majority of their attendees are from this particular region, then you can very easily switch into live events, just at a, local bar or something like that.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was very valuable. Thanks for your time.